Welcome to the Soul Script podcast. Here we explore how to unlock the power of our story. Our journey here on earth can be one of deep passion, intentional creation, and personal transformation. The only thing holding us back is our stories. Come and join me as we rewrite and reignite. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Script podcast. On this episode, we are going to specifically be talking about one of my favorite measuring sticks. Now, we can have a lot of measuring sticks in our lives to make sure that we're headed towards the goal that we've set for ourselves, or so that we're simply recentering ourselves for the bigger picture. So in Costa Rica, when I was there for a month with my family, I created this measuring stick to be able to help me to refocus my life. In the previous episode, I talked about thinking about death, I guess, and I shared with you some maybe perceived near-death experiences, at least near-death enough for me to reevaluate my life. I also talked about how even after these experiences, it has been hard for me to remember and cling on to the desire to be able to live my life differently because of the thought of death, the idea that we could die at any moment and we shouldn't take for granted this life. And if I were to die tomorrow, how would I want to live today? It's difficult to hold on to these thoughts as everyday life distracts us. So while I was in Costa Rica, which I will expand on a little bit, I developed this measuring stick to help me to stay focused on living that authentic, meaningful life that I wanted to live and set the intention to live. In episode 7, I gave you insight into what it was like for me to manifest this dream of doing slow travel around the world and how I had to make that work with my current circumstances. So I led you up to the point of leaving for Costa Rica and what that was like. Now let's go and give you a little bit of an insight into what it was like living day to day in this teeny tiny little surf town on the west coast of Costa Rica. This surf town was absolutely in the middle of nowhere. It took us 5.5 hours, if not more, to get there from San Jose, which is where we flew into. And nothing is around there. It's actually the blue zone or a blue zone. And I know that there's a documentary on Netflix that talks about the blue zone. And we so happen to be staying in the blue zone found in Costa Rica. But this means that life is different there. There's not big towns, and a lot of the food that you get there is local. Also, a lot of the prepackaged food that you get is crazy expensive, so you want to eat the local food. It's just in the middle of nowhere. The town that we were in was Santa Teresa, and this town is teeny tiny and just full of surf bums. Seriously, nobody else was there except for 20, 30-year-old surf bums. There was no youth and there were no elderly. All of the families lived about 20 minutes away in a town of Cobano. So they would commute into Santa Teresa, which we chose because it wasn't as touristy as other places. And it really wasn't. I guess it was touristy for surfers, which are kind of a different breed than, the average family that would want to spend a week or whatever in Costa Rica. So it was a totally different feeling. But the families would commute in, they would do their work in Santa Teresa and then go back to Cobano in the evening. So I'm just trying to give you a feeling of what it was like to be there. Every other shop on the one and only road that went through the town was a surf shop of some kind, whether they were selling swimsuits or they were renting surfboards or they were offering surf lessons. You would have a cafe and then a surf shop and then a cafe and then a surf shop and then a cafe and then a surf shop. I honestly don't know how everybody stayed in business because they were all competing with each other and there were so many shops. It was very saturated there. So it was a little weird to have our family there, to have our kids there, especially with their strawberry blonde hair. I think we really stood out. And we were also just noobs. We were beginner surfers, had never surfed before, but that's exactly what we were there to do and exactly why we wanted to be in that town. It's known for its really consistent breaks, and it's also known for its beginner-friendly waves. We stayed in an Airbnb that was 3 minutes away from the beach. And when I say 3 minutes, I mean a 3-minute walk away from the beach. Our Airbnb was absolutely fantastic. It was in a gated community that had a security guard there 24 hours a day, and it also had a swimming pool, which we swam in every single day. An average day there in Costa Rica looked like this. We would wake up at 5 a.m. when the sun came up and when the howler monkeys would wake us up. The howler monkeys that would visit us from our balcony in our house. It was seriously so cool. There was a huge family that they would make their way past our Airbnb almost every single day. So they would wake us up, the sun would wake us up. It was just a very natural time to wake up. We would have breakfast number one. And after we ate breakfast, we would load our surfboards up on our car, and then we would head to the beach. And the beach, the one that we surfed the most, Playa Hermosa, was through the town of Santa Teresa. And you had to go down the one and only road. And this road was a disaster. It was a nightmare. And our family has a lot of experience going down really crummy, bumpy roads. That's overlanding for you. But this road got to us, and I think that probably says something about this road. It had the most gigantic potholes, and you could only go like maybe 10 miles an hour down this road. So our beach was actually relatively close, but it took us 20 or 25 minutes to get there. The kids did learn to surf, but it wasn't something that they fell in love with, and I really tried to keep an open mind about this because I knew that there was the possibility that my family would go and learn to surf and not really enjoy it. And I knew that it was something that I desired to learn and that they were kind of going along on my dream. So I just kind of held this idea that everybody was going to learn to surf and to love it loosely in my hand and just let it be what it was. And I'm glad I did this because the kids did learn to surf and they did enjoy it, but honestly, they love to just play in the sand for hours and hours and hours. And then they love to just go and jump the waves. And they really enjoyed boogie boarding because honestly, you can catch a lot more waves boogie boarding than you can surfing. So it was almost more rewarding to boogie board than it was surfing. So Andrew and I would spend the morning surfing, and then the girls would spend the morning playing in the sand. I honestly don't know how you can play in the sand for that long, but that is what they love to do. After a couple hours, we would load up our surfboards and drive down the crummy road and go back to our house where we would have second breakfast, which was usually Nutella sandwiches. I don't think I can eat another Nutella sandwich for the rest of my life. We had so many Nutella sandwiches because they were just easy and everybody enjoyed them. After second breakfast, Andrew would go and do his regular day job, which luckily is remote, so he can do it from almost anywhere. And the kids and I would work on school, Denali doing an online school and me homeschooling the younger two. And it was an absolute joy to be able to homeschool there because we would do a little bit of work And then we would go to the swimming pool and swim, and then we would come back and finish up school. And then we were usually done with school before Andrew was done working. So the girls and I would hop in the car and just drive somewhere, go on some kind of adventure. Although, like I said, in this really secluded area of Costa Rica, you did have to drive really far to get most anywhere. But it was still really fun to go and explore what we could. Andrew would finish work around 4 and we would all walk down to the beach together and we would walk along the beach for sunset. We wouldn't just walk along the beach most of the time. Once again, we were back in the waves and the kids were playing in the sand. So we would play in the sand and in the water 2 times a day. And we would also go swimming. So we were basically always in our swimsuits and we used up a huge bottle of shampoo and conditioner from washing our hair so many times. But it was beautiful and it was wonderful and it was exactly what I wanted it to be. When people ask me what it was like in Costa Rica, sometimes I have a hard time saying it was freaking amazing because I really don't want to gloat or have anybody feel bad when I talk about it. But in reality, it was incredible to wake up to the howler monkeys, to stay in our swimsuits all day, to surf, to eat the most amazing fresh fruit, and to just walk around barefoot everywhere that we went. There was one specific afternoon when we got done with school really early. The girls and I got done, and Andrew had to still work. So we decided to go to the beach without him. I surfed for a bit while the kids, once again, played in the sand endlessly. But I got really fatigued when I was surfing because honestly, I could only stay out and try to catch a few waves for a short amount of time because it is a total body experience. It is like doing burpees 100 times. It is an arm workout, paddling, and it's a leg workout trying to fight any currents that were there. And unfortunately, there was usually some kind of a current that we were working against. So I'm pooped. I go and take my surfboard up to the beach and just flop on the sand next to the kids who were trying to build a sandcastle. And they really wanted me to help them build this sandcastle. And I really didn't want to build this sandcastle because I was so tired. But I had said no to building a sandcastle with them many, many times. And I thought it was probably time for me to join them in building a sandcastle. Now, I consider myself a sandcastle building expert. I learned how to build sandcastles from my dad, and I was always amazed at how well he could build a sandcastle. So I wanted to teach my kids how to build a sandcastle the right way. Well, one of the factors in building a really good sandcastle is the consistency of your sand. It can't be too wet, it can't be too dry. So you have to build your sandcastle basically right on the line where the waves come up on the beach. So we started building our sandcastle. We're digging this moat all around it to protect it from any incoming waves, and our hands are like getting raw because of digging in the sand. So I find some shells and we continue digging and making this moat, and we start building up our sandcastle, and this wave comes up and washes away the whole thing in just one go when we had spent probably at least 10 minutes building it up. So I said, okay, we need to move up the beach a little bit because we can't handle those big of waves. So we go and we start digging that moat again and trying to work as fast as we can to make sure we have enough time to build this sandcastle before another wave comes. And once again, a wave comes up and just immediately destroys all of our work that we had spent a lot of time and energy creating. So, okay, let's move up farther away from the water. And we once again do the same thing, and you guessed it, once again, a wave comes up and washes it away because the tide was coming in. So we couldn't have a place where there was good consistency of sand, but was also safe from the waves. Finally, I gave up and I just kind of sat there next to the kids who were still trying to build this sandcastle. And this thought came into my mind: stop building sandcastles. And I knew that this voice, this idea, wasn't referring to the actual sandcastle in front of me. It was referring to the sandcastles that I was building in life. And I thought about the things that I was putting a lot of time and effort into that would only last a short amount of time. That was the equivalent of a single wave coming up and washing it away. I thought of spending time on social media. I thought of spending time with relationships that weren't safe relationships and could seemingly be washed out from under me. Then I remembered this measuring stick that Andrew and I created for ourselves. And I had actually forgotten about this measuring stick, but it was brought back into my mind. This measuring stick is essentially this. You look at the time and energy that you're putting in something and ask yourself, will this mean something or last 5 days? Will it last 5 weeks? Will it last 5 months? What about 5 years? What about 50 years? And then you recenter yourself to essentially evaluate the time, money, and energy that you're putting into something and how long it will be meaningful for you in the future. This sandcastle that we were trying to build really expended huge amounts of energy, and it took a lot of time to build it, but it lasted no more than 5 minutes. That to me is not a ratio of energy versus output that I wanted to do anymore. It was exhausting. Now let's go back to the previous episode where I shared my thoughts on death and my near-death experiences that really made me reevaluate my life and want to spend time, energy, and money on things that actually mattered. This is the perfect measuring stick to keep me focused on that conviction of living a life that was prioritized in the right way. Let's do a little exercise together that I think will help you and myself to gain clarity on something that really isn't adding value to our life or isn't worth the resources that we have been putting into it. So let's close our eyes, and please don't do this while you're driving, but if you're not driving, close your eyes. And as always, just take a really big, deep breath. A big, deep breath helps us to center ourselves and helps us to calm ourselves. And it actually gets us out of our head and brings us down into our heart. And our heart is a really good place to make decisions from. I know that is different than the message that you've probably received your entire life of don't make decisions based off of your heart or your emotions. But in reality, our mind can trick us, and our heart is where we can identify the truth when it resonates within our body. And so taking a deep breath brings us into our heart, where we can pay attention to how our body feels, where we have that internal knowledge of truth or deception. So close your eyes and take a really deep breath. We're going to go in and out and breathe in powerfully through your nose and breathe in until you can't breathe in anymore. Go. And breathe out through your mouth. Until everything is pushed out. All right, now hopefully we're feeling centered and we can ask powerful questions. And the question that we're going to ask ourselves today is, what is one thing that you have been spending a lot of resources on? Let it come up. What's something that's taking a lot of time? What's something that's taking a lot of energy? What's something that's taking a lot of money? As whatever it is comes to your mind, please trust that intuition that you have of that idea that came to your mind. Don't second guess it. And I want you to ask yourself, is this thing that I'm spending so much time, money, and energy on going to last 5 days? And am I okay with what I'm spending on it? Is it going to last 5 weeks? Is it going to last 5 months? Is it going to last 5 years? What about 50 years? What about 500 years? Now I want you to ask yourself, are the resources that I'm putting into this thing worth my time, energy, and money? If the answer is yes, then great. Keep that on your priority list. If the answer is no, think about letting it go. It can be really hard to let something go like this because it could be part of our day-to-day life. It could be part of our habits that we're used to, that it's really difficult to stop those habits. Now, one interesting thing that I've learned through my years is that when we're letting something go, it's best to replace it with something. And I don't mean like, let's let this go and then immediately fill it with something that's still going to take all of our time, energy, and money. I mean, let's let this go and put in its place a good belief or a different habit or a different way of living that would be more beneficial than what it is you have been previously doing. So as we center ourselves once again, and we have this idea in mind, and it's something that we want to let go, I want you to decide what it is you're going to put in its place. What habits are you going to do instead of the one that's taking your life force energy away? What belief are you going to place instead of the belief that wasn't serving you anymore? All right. Now that we have decided what we're going to put in its place, I want you to let it go, the thing that's not serving you anymore. I want you to imagine grabbing it from your body, grabbing it from yourself, or you could actually physically put your hand up. You know, sometimes these thoughts, emotions, things are associated with a certain body part. So if you feel like it's in your heart, or maybe if you feel like it's in your head, and I'm not sure if that makes total sense to you, but if you feel it somewhere in your body, you could actually put your hand to it and just imagine that you're grabbing and pulling it out and throwing it away. And I want you to just let it energetically go. And then in its place, put in the new idea, habit, whatever it may be that is going to serve you. Take a deep breath in and let it just settle inside of your body, inside of your spirit and your soul. So just take the deep breath and go, and let it be something that becomes a part of you. Now remember, it's not always easy to keep this in your view. And that's why we have this measuring stick. And that's how we can decide if what we're spending our time, energy, and money on is actually something that we want to be doing. Ask yourself if it's going to last 5 years or 500 years, and let that be your measuring stick to come back to center and refocus on what it is that is the highest priority in your life. Hopefully you have enjoyed this little exercise that we've done together. You can use this exercise for a lot of different things. This is a good way for me personally to identify something that's not serving me anymore, visualize myself getting rid of it, taking time to decide what I want to put in its place, and then letting it settle in my body, mind, and spirit to at some point be integrated in me and be stamped upon my being. Having this thought of no longer building sandcastles actually was great for me because this was mid-trip in Costa Rica. And up until that point, I was actually focusing on things that weren't going to last. And I started focusing on the aspects of that trip that were going to last, like bonding with my kids and being extremely present in the now. Those are one of the most important things in my life, and those things are going to last maybe even 500 years as they continue to pass on their priorities to their children and their children's children and so on and so forth. That seems like a really great way to spend my time, energy, and money. That is it for this podcast episode. I love you all so much, and I can't wait to talk to you again. If you are enjoying the content that you're listening to here on the Soul Script podcast, I have something that I think you might be interested in. And this is one-on-one transformation coaching with myself. Sometimes we just want to take things to the next level. And what this requires is somebody there who can personalize your journey for you. So maybe this is a really transformative time in your life, or you're going through a major transition. Or maybe it's just you wanting to break through some barriers and do some belief work. That is something that I can help you with and that I would love to help you with. These one-on-one sessions can look a variety of ways, but no matter what, I just want you to have a space where you feel comfortable and you have somebody who's giving you individual one-on-one attention that is really specific to whatever it is that you are going through or wherever it is that you are trying to get to. And that is what I specialize in. One-on-one conversations where we talk about you, your story, and where necessary, we help rewrite your story so that you can have a better quality of life, having more joy in your life, and just reaching those things that you're trying to reach for. So if this is calling your name, then you can go over to soulscriptstudio.com where you can sign up for a one-on-one consultation with myself, and we can get to work on whatever it is that you specifically need. I am so excited about this, and I really hope that I get to see you one-on-one.